Okay, so welcome everybody to this webinar on social enterprise to mark International Women's Day. Excuse me, I've got notes here, so that's why I'm kind of looking down a little bit, so do excuse that. My name's Jess Gildener, I'm the Communications Manager here at the Social Enterprise Academy, and my lovely colleagues asked me if I would help host this webinar, which we are so lucky to have some fantastic speakers from around the world. As well as my colleague Charlotte, who's right next to me as well. So in this discussion, we're going to be looking at how social enterprise is empowering women around the world, the role of social enterprise in progressing gender equality, and also learn a bit more about what needs to still be done and how we can still take some action to make things even better. So before I introduce our really brilliant speakers, just if there's anybody else that's just joined us, please say hi and let us know where you're from. And also please do keep adding questions for our guests as well. So we'll make sure we have a really useful and dynamic discussion by hearing from you about what you think is important, about what you'd really like to hear from people as well. So you should just be able to use the comments box along the side, and we'll keep an eye on those and put those into the discussion too. So I just want to introduce Sadaf, first of all, Sadaf Mahmood, who is an enterprise strategist at Seed Enterprises in Pakistan. She's also manager of Social Enterprise Academy in Pakistan. She's been involved in the development and strategy of several countrywide social enterprise projects and networks, and is also a writer and commentator on entrepreneurship, culture and heritage, social and environmental issues, and women's empowerment. Also Karen Chinkwita, so I don't know if you can see Karen there, hopefully you can. Karen is founder of Jubilee Enterprises, a social enterprise business development service for young entrepreneurs, and she's also CEO of Social Enterprise Academy in Malawi. She's worked in the private sector and in multiple senior and startup roles as well before doing those things. And then finally, Charlotte Lawley, who is manager of Social Enterprise Academy in Southern Scotland. Charlotte's got a background in organisational development and in developing equality campaigns through the National Union of Students, and particularly in developing policy to empower young women with a focus on those with multiple oppressions as well. So I feel like wow, I've got some pretty incredible women here. So to kick things off, I'd just really like to ask Sadaf to talk about how social enterprise is empowering women in communities in Pakistan. So over to you, Sadaf.
Thank you, Jess, and hello, everyone. So the first one always is at a disadvantage, but also an advantage, because I'd like to first present two pictures of Pakistan. So I don't know how many of our participants of our audience know what is there on media about Pakistan and its entrepreneurial ecosystem. So one picture of that ecosystem is that we have very few women entrepreneurs overall. So according to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 2012, and in the 2014,
oh, Sadaf, I'm really sorry, Sadaf.
That wasn't there at all. So in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor 20.
Sadaf, I'm afraid we've got a real problems with your sound. I think what I'm going to do.
Do you want me or Karen to go?
I'm going to ask Charlotte, and then we'll just check the connection. So sorry about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, Charlotte.
Yeah, so I think speaking from Scotland, we've got quite a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I think there are a lot of positive signs that social enterprise in kind of the mature ecosystem that we have is playing a part in gender equality, and I think the ambition is certainly for it to play more of a part in the future. So I think that in itself is a really big positive. I think there are particular things to social enterprise which means that it has a role to play in terms of enabling and giving women the opportunity to become their own boss, to have a sense of agency, to be creative, to tackle the problems that they want to tackle on their own terms, which is not something which has historically been available to women. So I think social enterprise is, in Scotland, certainly enabling women to think they can lead business and create business on their own terms. It's certainly an opportunity as well for women's organisations, I think, which are, you know, chronically underfunded. And social enterprise obviously presents an opportunity for them to create finance, bring in revenue, and sustain their activities and their vital services for women. I think on the kind of leadership picture for women in Scotland as well, it's all the signs are positive. The 2017 census showed that I think around 60% of social enterprises were being led by women, which is an incredibly encouraging story when you think about young girls, young women coming into the workplace and seeing that that representation of women at the top table. That can only be a good thing in terms of role modelling. I do wonder if the picture is slightly misrepresented sometimes. I think there's still work to do. I think the majority of social enterprises in Scotland focus on areas where women traditionally dominate the workforce, so health and social care, education and childcare. And so I think that representation of women in leadership positions reflects that picture of its traditionally women-dominated sectors. So there's perhaps work to do in looking into actually what about tech social enterprises, engineering social enterprises? Do we have the same representation? Is it as progressive as we'd like to think? But certainly the picture is looking good. And I think there's a lot that Scotland's doing in terms of putting a focus on social enterprise and its role in gender equality in particular, which makes me, as a young woman in the sector, really, really encouraged.
Great, thanks very much, Charlotte. I'm going to try to come back to Sadaf now. Hi, Sadaf. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me clearly? Yeah, okay. So the first time I heard about the social enterprise landscape in Scotland, I was very pleased to hear the large percentage of women leading it. But like I was saying, here in Pakistan, there are two pictures. One side of the ecosystem is that very few enterprises are led by women entrepreneurs. And right now, I'm not even talking about the social enterprises. But out of that, and that's as compared to 21% men who are entrepreneurs. However, in the social enterprise landscape, 20% at the moment are being run by women. That's a very small percentage. Social entrepreneurship itself is at its nascent stage. There is this lack of awareness also, although it's increasing. There are fewer players here. And out of those fewer players, that work in the social enterprise arena, they have their own niche. So while we know them and we appreciate their work, we know that there are many social enterprises led by women that cover this 20%, who are specifically working to empower women, to address issues that women are facing, and to create networks and to bring them together through their enterprises, be it in leadership positions, be it bringing women or pushing women towards boards of companies, for instance, or creating jobs for qualified individuals, qualified women who are sitting at home because of cultural nuances, because of the traditions that Pakistan has in terms of how women are raised and how women are supposed to work or not work. And they're creating those linkages. So later on, when we talk about some local examples, I have some great examples, and that's heartening to see. And anything that we can do to walk and to bring them to limelight, or to create a support network for them, or to create access to finance for them, we're trying to do that. At the same time, the same women, they're turning into this unified voice. Perhaps many of them are undocumented. So one of the reasons is also the lack of the absence of a social enterprise legislation. So most of these social enterprises, either led by men or women, they're undocumented. So this 20% is the documented, these are the not documented numbers. But like I said, women-led enterprises, social enterprises, they're far more perceptive in how women are facing these challenges and how they can address them and bring them forward. Jess, I can't hear you. I think you have to
Oh yeah, so I'm still getting the hang of this. So just what I was saying was, it was interesting that whilst the niche sectors are potentially different in Pakistan and in Scotland, but there are niche sectors that seem to be more predominantly led by women. So I was just wondering if is that reflective in Malawi as well, Karen? If I can bring you into this as well, and if not, what do you see in terms of social enterprise and women's equality and gender equality in Malawi?
Hey, Jess.
Hi.
Firstly, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Well, in Malawi, we have similar challenges. Firstly, in Malawi, 52% of the population is women. You will find that the word social enterprise is not a very popular word in Malawi, while social enterprises do exist, have not yet been profiled. So our statistics at this point may be unrealistic. But of the interaction that we have had, we have made a lot of social enterprises and now realizing there are social enterprises and they can receive support for that. One similar interest here for Sadaf enterprises.
Sorry, Karen, we've lost you now. Oh, what a shame. Oh dear.
Hey there, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm not sure where you lost me.
Yeah, it's kind of coming and going on the sound, unfortunately. But I think if am I right in thinking that you said there were similar challenges?
Yes, one of them being profiling and legislation.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Karen. We can't hear you at all. I'm just gonna
Profiling legislation. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's really fantastic, and then it kind of goes off again. So, what I'm going to do is just ask if any of the listeners, the attendees, have any questions for anybody, because we could also type those out. We could always kind of make sure that we get answers written in as well. So that's an option too. So we do want to make sure that we kind of hear from Karen as well, and just in case we don't manage to hear her properly. So please do put some questions forward. While we're kind of waiting for some questions to come through, I was just wondering, Charlotte, are there any barriers that you specifically see for women in social enterprise that are particular to women? So some of the things I was reading about in the British Council study of social enterprise and women was around childcare. It was around accessing investment, that they seem to be less likely to get investment. There's also the pay gap still exists in social enterprise. So there sort of still seems to be kind of quite a few of those gender specific challenges and barriers. And I was just wondering if you had any knowledge about that, or seen any experiences of that at all.
I think it's interesting thinking about the barriers in social enterprise, because actually, as you say, Jess, I think the barriers are probably the universal barriers that prevent women from accessing jobs or careers or leadership positions in most of the sectors. You know, it is women disproportionately are the carers of the family. They do the bulk of the childcare. They earn less because of the gender pay gap. There is also, I think, and they're kind of more structural barriers, I suppose, but I think they apply to social enterprise. It's perhaps easiest because of the values and the principles of social enterprise for us to be inventive in overcoming them and making those opportunities more accessible to women rather than other sectors. But I think they do exist. I think there's also, you know, again, the universal issue of women being business leaders is something in history which is actually relatively new. So there is, I think, a lack of confidence, role models still for women to look to learn from, to network with, which is so important if you're wanting to carve out a career as a business leader in whatever sector. So I think there are structural things which exist for everyone, and then things that, you know, which are innate to how women have been perceived in society, the insecurities and the confidence that could hold people back. But I think social enterprise, with its understanding of that, is actually allowing women to overcome it in some of the ways that Sadaf was talking about, around coming together in these networks with women, with your peers. So yeah, I think, I don't know if it's peculiar to social enterprise, the barriers. I think it's probably the same old, you know, barriers that have existed and still do, yeah, to some extent, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Charlotte. So I'd really like to come back to you, Sadaf, to sort of expand on some of those barriers that you've seen, but also the what also really attracts women.
Jess, I think you're on mute. I can't hear the.
Sorry, I've done it again.
I heard that you wanted me to elaborate on those barriers specific to Pakistan and specific to women, and I missed the next part.
So it was just to talk about, to elaborate also on the things that you see are attracting women to social enterprise. So you talked about networks and peer support. Is there anything else that's kind of specifically about business as well, like something that you see women really responding to at all?
Yes, sure. I'm actually I've turned my video off. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, okay. So I'll actually build on the barriers bit first, especially because it's very, it's specific to not just women in Pakistan, but I believe, as much as I know from friends who are working in this space in other parts in the region, here in Southeast Asia, many of them actually say they face the similar problems. However, especially in Pakistan, there are mobility constraints. That is one of the key factors, because if you know a little bit about the demographics and how it, you know, how the public transport system is, the public transport is only for a particular segment of the society, which is the grassroots. And otherwise, people like you and me, people from middle class, they don't use that. So let's say they want to open they want to launch a social enterprise that caters to underprivileged women. First of all, there will be mobility constraints, yes, unless they have some sort of arrangement or some independence in terms of transport. That mobility constraint is also one part of a much larger factor that creates obstacles for women in general in Pakistan, which are cultural nuances, like I said. So overall, our upbringing has been, regardless what segment of the society we come from, so overall our upbringing has been such where male members manage the outdoor tasks. So there is this, and I'm going to turn on the video just for this one because I want to emphasize on how there is this inside the house and outside the house. This also briefly families to cook the food, which is brilliant. I want to give my own example, and I want to give examples of my other colleagues, my peers. They're raising children, they're running a household, and they're managing all of this, and they're traveling. However, we are very few, very small, privileged lot who have that capability and the access to a lot of things that many women don't. But these cultural nuances are, they're specific to women in Pakistan, regardless what status or social stature you have. Then there are occasions for women. The most respectable and acceptable profession, if you're not very highly qualified, is teaching, which is unfortunate because the whole vision behind teaching is distorted like that. Another vocation which is acceptable is, okay, you can go ahead and be a doctor. Having said that, things are changing. You see women in so many different professions. You see some wonderful entrepreneurs. You see a lot of women now in leadership positions. So gradually, we're steering away from those traditions which are holding back the progress of the economy, and not just women empowerment, or not just to create that discrimination. At the same time, I think either Karen or Charlotte mentioned this lack of role models. I want to quote an example. I was facilitating a session in Nepal where women from Southeast Asia were there. And I was highly impressed with how successful and accomplished they were. And a simple question that I asked led to this whole, it was a shock for me. I'd asked if any of them, how often do they turn to their mentors? All 15, 16 women, 20 women in the room, they said they didn't have a mentor. I found my own mentors very late in life. I found them much later than I should have. But I know that they play a very important role. So that lack of that mentor pool or people you can turn to, especially women mentors or male mentors for that matter. Women here, social entrepreneurs here, if they had access to people who they could turn to, who would advise them without judging them, that would create a whole lot of a difference. In terms of what is attracting women to social enterprises, these are women, and I can say that, I feel that men and women have different sets of strengths and they have different perceptions. And together they can work beautifully and create true impact instead of sort of alienating that gender gap and all that I feel instead of alienating one group of people, it should be working towards a particular goal together. So while women live those challenges every day, they're also able to be sensitive to them and create solutions to address them. So a number of social enterprises that I know of that we work with or have invested in, it is because of that the strength that these women have of having that perceptiveness, of having those innovative ideas, because they know that other women face similar challenges as they do. So I feel one of the reasons why they go for social enterprises rather than commercial enterprises could be this.
Thanks very much, Sadaf. I think this is really looking forward to hearing some more examples from you in a second about some of the things that you've seen in Pakistan and what's working really well. I'm going to try and come back to Karen now. I've got a question for Karen, and she has jotted some notes down for me in case the sound doesn't work, but hopefully we'll hear from her. Okay, Karen, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Jess.
Hi, okay, we can hear you. That's great. So I've got a question from Morven. What obstacles are there for women in social enterprise in Malawi, and what is helping this area grow in Malawi?
Jess, may you please repeat that? I lost you.
Yeah, it was, what obstacles are there for women in social enterprise in Malawi, and what's helping this area grow?
As from the area of social enterprise?
Yes, helping social enterprise grow in Malawi.
There have been several organizations that have come out onto the scene to build the capacity of, and can you still hear me?
Off and on, so it's a little bit patchy.
All right. So what is helping the growth of social enterprise is the appearance of capacity building organizations on the scene and an awareness towards. And again, women are natural social entrepreneurs, and a lot of the social enterprises that we have seen in Malawi are being led by women. An example was Keys, who was the first individual citizen in Malawi to receive an honorary doctorate in social entrepreneurship in recognition of what she had done in her community. So role models like that, women that are pioneering the scene. There is Rachel Sivande of MHub. There are a lot of women that are actually pioneering social enterprising and social entrepreneurship, which is interesting to see. There are a lot of other social enterprises, probably led by men, but the ones that are making a footnote are the ones that are led by women in Malawi. So that's actually encouraging to see on the scene.
Is there anything in particular that's distinguishing the enterprises being run by women? So you're saying that they're the ones that are really making a kind of big splash there. So is there something in particular that they're doing, or is it something about the people involved that's made that different?
If you look at the word social enterprise, there's an element of social, which means you have to care about someone or the environment. And compassion is a natural element in women. You will see that women are most likely, especially in Malawi, to open schools and orphanages and feeding centers. And women are now working more and more together in little savings and loans groups to promote each other, to form cooperatives. So that natural tendency to care is actually leading women entrepreneurs towards being social entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So you'll find a woman starts the same business as a man does, but it will have a social component, whether they're thinking about it or not. And our role as a Social Enterprise Academy has been for them to strengthen that model and to see how they could increase their impact.
Mm. So is there a kind of marked difference between the themes of a social enterprise set up by men and women? So as Charlotte was talking about here, like it's very was this huge number of social enterprises within the sort of care sector, which sounds quite similar in some ways to Malawi. What kind of social enterprises are men setting up?
There is a social enterprise called Beehive that said it would be about skill building and setting up centers. It has about 5 to 10 different themes that it does. It's very slightly complicated, but you find it's more about skills and giving skills back to communities, to street kids. So it's more about skill development and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So I'm kind of going to go off script a bit. So sorry, my colleague Gemma.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's just that there's a few themes kind of coming out here, and like one of there's two things I'm picking up on, and one is around networks and that kind of peer support, and the other is around role models and pioneers, and I'm just quite interested to explore that a little bit, and like how like who's inspired you and why, and yeah, how we could nurture a bit more of that, I suppose. So sorry guys. Karen, who's inspired you?
Well, I'm surrounded by a lot of inspiring women. I had the opportunity of working with Women Creating Wealth program, and you would see that a lot of women entrepreneurs. We managed to find a couple of women billionaires in Malawi, Kwacha, which would probably make them millionaires in dollars. Women that were moving large sums of money, and you'd find that each one of them still had a social component, that they still cared about the community and about the environment and the people that they worked with, and they wouldn't necessarily call themselves social entrepreneurs, perhaps social businesses. Um, I'm inspired by Dr. Keys, who's up north in Zuzu, helping women who live with HIV, and she set up an amazing school called Zuzu Academy, and again, another school for vulnerable children in the community. So you will find that I'm quite inspired around me. There are a lot of other young women that are doing amazing things, like Rachel in the tech industry, setting up tech hubs. I would say it's quite a fun environment to be surrounded by pioneers who are concerned about the community and using their field to change the people around them.
So I'm going to ask Charlotte now. Thank you very much, Karen. I'm so pleased that
Thank you.
the sound got better. So I'll come back in a minute.
Lovely surprise questions, Jess. I think in terms of inspiring women, I was trying to think about this in terms of kind of local examples of women in Scotland who have set up social enterprises, and there are, to be honest, too many to talk about. But there are a few which stand out, I think, because of these women have kind of are the epitome of kind of making liberation happen. They are the people who've experienced discrimination or oppression, and they're the ones to find the solution, which is as it should be, and they're just doing incredible stuff. So Hey Girls, which is a new social enterprise which is around tackling period poverty, was set up by Celia and her daughters, and it's just going from strength to strength, and it's tackling a national issue, but doing it in quite a local and fun way, so that women can be involved and, yes, be beneficiaries, but also be part of the movement. And that's what's really inspiring about some of the other social enterprises, like Mrs., which I always get the wrong way around, things like Project 42. They're all set up to support women in some way who have been victims of, whether it's abuse, whether it's poverty, but all of them empower women not just to be beneficiaries of services and support. They actually bring the women along with them, upskill them, support them, so that then the women have some power and confidence to go on and do whatever it is they want to do in their lives. And I think that kind of mentality which the women leading social enterprises have, which is about, it's not just about me as the leader, it's about everyone that I'm bringing with me, is incredibly inspiring, and a really fantastic model if gender equality is the name of the game, in terms of these social enterprises. So
Great example. Yeah. Oh, muted myself again. Thanks, Charlotte. So can I come back to you, Sadaf, so that bring that full circle, about who you found inspiring, and to also talk about some examples of social enterprises in Pakistan that have been empowering women.
Sure. So I was actually listening to Karen, and I was thinking about my own mentors. Like I said, I found them really late in my life, in my 30s, far too late. And at the same time, I have to admit that they were men. So one is my surrogate dad, who's not just been very inspirational, but also taught me integrity in everyday life, not just work ethics, but in the smallest of commitments that we make. and that affects your professional life in a massive way. The other is Faraz, my partner, my mentor, who's the CEO, co-founder of Seed Ventures. And like I said, there's a dearth of this absence of networks where you can find women who can be your role model and who can provide you that support. Having said that, there are some admirable women working in various industries as entrepreneurs, as social entrepreneurs, or at least trying to focus on creating this unified mechanism where these young startups can find a voice, can walk for things they're
Sorry, Sadaf, it's
about and make a
lost
difference.
you a bit there.
There are women running incubators. They've dedicated one of their. Okay, is this better? Better? Yes. Okay. Then actually, if we look at the generation before us, we know that there are some great women I'm now friends with who had set up the enterprises and are known as pioneers in the advertising industry, for instance. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay.
It's going on and off, but I think we should keep going.
Okay. So since we're on social enterprises, I thought of these two beautiful models that started as a movement. So both of these, one is the second floor that was started by a woman till, she's passed away now in very unfortunate, but she set up something that started with a movement, like a platform for people who come together, for entrepreneurs and musicians and artists, and became a voice, not just for women, but for young people, people from different walks of life. And it's still going on. Is Pakistan.
Oh, Sadaf, I'm really sorry.
It's women.
I'm really sorry. We've lost you quite a lot there.
To heritage.
Sorry, Sadaf. Sorry. It's such a shame because it was it's a fantastic story. I'm going to go off script again because there's something that actually picked up from Sadaf in particular, but I think all of you touched on it. Is that gender equality is about equality. It's not about women being better than men. It's not about us doing it on our own. How can we, who've been fantastic men who have kind of like actually helped us to work in social enterprise, and what are the things about then that have actually helped us? So is there anything in particular that has worked? Because I'm sort of thinking of people who I've worked with, and the ones who've really listened to me and who haven't kind of advised me too much and just let me be me, have been the ones that have been really important. So I'm just quite intrigued to see, like what is it that we can do where we're actually working together much better, and what is it that we need from men? I don't know if that sounds like a terrible question, but in terms of social enterprise. So Karen, I'm going to come to you if I can. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. So have you any thoughts on that?
Well, I have been mentored and guided along by a lot of male role models in my journey to becoming a social entrepreneur. I would think that when we're looking at the journey of social enterprise, especially towards Malawi, it's not pretty much a gender equality question. It's more of a socioeconomic development question, that what do we have to do to be sure that Malawi as a whole, or the civil sector or entrepreneurs, are involved in developing the country. And that would be men and women working together to create platforms for social entrepreneurs to become legal, creating access to finance amongst each other as social entrepreneurs. I think at the end of the day, it would be social enterprise trumps gender. In the case that for social enterprise to go forward, for development to happen, we have to work together and to create equal opportunity for each social entrepreneur to get where they're supposed to go.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to come to you, Charlotte, now.
Okay. I think there are lots of things which I think men in the sector and outside of the sector can be doing and are doing, actually, in terms of supporting the gender equality agenda. I think there are very practical things which men can be doing, offering to be on the boards for these new social enterprises that are being set up by women, offering, advice and guidance and their experience. Staff is talking about being a mentor. There are all sorts of things which men in our sector who are experienced social entrepreneurs or policymakers or whatever it might be have to contribute. And I think just being there, making the offer of support can go an awfully long way. So they're very practical things. I think also within the sector, it's just about being mindful, about who's sitting at the table. Are we inviting the right people to make decisions? Is this a diverse enough group to make this decision? And making sure that women's voices are heard and listened to, and just being conscious of that. But I think as a sector we're doing it pretty well, and men are an ally in this, certainly. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I really want to ask if any of the attendees have any questions. So I popped it up on the comments board, and I've not had any back through, but I'm sure that there must be some questions out there. So please do pop some through. I think I was wondering if any of the panelists had questions for each other. Charlotte, have you got any questions for Sadaf or for Karen at all?
I haven't off the top of my head, but I will.
You've
given me that task.
Sorry. Okay, so what I'd like to ask is, if there was one thing you could change about that would bring about greater empowerment for women through social enterprise, what would it be? So if there was one thing that you think would make a really, really key difference, what would that be? So I'm going to come to Sadaf for that first, if that's okay.
Jess, you'll have to repeat that because your voice was breaking a bit.
Okay. I was just asking if there was one thing that you could change or would really like to see being done differently that would bring about greater empowerment for women in social enterprise, what would it be?
Oh, I have one word for that: legislation.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is going to benefit not just women entrepreneurs, women social entrepreneurs, but also social enterprises in general, because this is a vicious cycle that we have seen in terms of documentation. A lot of these social enterprises might have the same model. They're not even aware that the model that they're following is that of a social enterprise. And how does one go about it? You can't actually collect that data because they're registered either as private limited companies or they're registered as NGOs. We ourselves are a social enterprise. We're registered as a private limited company. So how do you collect that data? Also, since there is still that lack of awareness, and social entrepreneurship is still not very popularly widely known as a term. So yes, legislation, we've been lobbying with the British Council, with another think tank based here for a while now. And we stick to that. That is that one word that would make a whole lot of a difference.
Yeah, I could really understand that, because certainly within Scotland, social enterprise has really come along in the last couple of decades, and I think a large part of that is, I mean, obviously so much of us come from communities themselves, but there is the support of government as well, and policy in place to support social enterprise development. And whilst there are ongoing discussions about what social enterprise is, broadly speaking, there is a social enterprise sector. So it can, you know, and that obviously has an impact on who gets money, on who gets support, on the ecosystem that's developed around it. So I can really understand like how that would make an enormous difference. I'm not sure about what the situation is in Malawi, Karen. Could you talk about that a bit, about the legislation and the support from government for social enterprises?
In Malawi, situation is slightly more positive.
Oh, sorry,
That
Karen.
is actually quite open for social enterprises.
Oh, we can't hear you, Karen. I'm really sorry. Oh dear. Okay, so I'm going to come back to you, Charlotte, and see if you've got any questions for the others. You haven't? Okay.
That's what I was thinking
That was what
about.
you were thinking about. Okay, so if there was one thing that you would like to change,
Yeah.
is there anything that you can think of?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really difficult question, because I think the barriers which do exist are there, cutting across all of society. It's very difficult to identify what it is particularly about social enterprise which is maybe a barrier. I think in a different way to Sadaf, the legislation in Scotland is there. Legislation is there to secure equality, gender equality, but I think what we do need is mindsets and behaviours and attitudes to catch up. And that's not something which social entrepreneurs and social enterprise as a sector can do alone. So that's quite a, you know, that's a societal thing. But I think attitudes are catching up and it will help. But I think in terms of social enterprise, what we can look forward to is how much awareness there is among school children in universities and colleges about social enterprise as a real career choice and not something obscure that kind of sits in between charities and business, as something which doesn't quite fit. I think it's well understood in Scotland. So I think the generations to come, and hopefully the young girls that are coming through education, are understanding and seeing this as a viable career prospect for them. And I think that is probably what's going to create the gender equality that we want. It will take time, but I think that's really what's at the essence of it, education and supporting young women and young girls into this.
Yeah. Sadaf, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on that as well, and like how social enterprise in schools or in universities is having an impact on young women in Pakistan.
So like I said, social entrepreneurship is not really very popularly known. It has not become a household name. It is not even very commonly understood in university students, unless they have some exposure to it or have attended a seminar. However, I do want to give one example of a program that we launched here with Princess Trust International, Enterprise Challenge, which was in 2008 in the so in Pakistan, we're that.
Sadaf, I was just wondering if you could turn off your video, just because, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So, like I said, that the beauty of this program is that it is run in very remote parts of Pakistan for school children, 13 to 16-year-olds. And the 2016 winner was an all-boys school from a very remote part with no infrastructure, who came up with an idea of a social enterprise for women empowerment, all 5 boys, because they understood the impact that education and exposure can actually have for their women. And they've launched it with our guidance and help and mentor quite successfully, and working for young girls, also educating them. So last year in 2017, 7 Pakistan, all social enterprises, they're all school children. Many of those social enterprises that are now being launched by us with those young children are focused on women empowerment. So apart from that's the largest business challenge for school.
Oh, sorry, Sadaf, we have lost you now. Oh dear. Okay, I'm going to come back to Charlotte, because I know that we do have
our university.
Oh, so, oh, I'm really sorry, everybody, that the sound hasn't been wonderful. But to be honest, that is also one of the challenges of working internationally, and for Sadaf and for Karen as well, where you're working with, don't necessarily have great internet connections. So it's been really fantastic that they have persevered, to be honest. I really, really appreciate that. I think what I'd like to do, because we are sort of nearing the end and we don't have any questions from the attendees coming through, but Charlotte, is there anything else that you would like to talk about in terms of, this big broad question? I mean, there's anything that you've seen that's made a really big and clear impact on women within social enterprise, or more broadly, or what you find personally most empowering about social enterprise?
I think it's similar to what Sadaf and Karen have been saying. I think the most inspiring thing in all of this is seeing women leading, starting, and creating thriving social enterprises which are tackling real issues which women are facing. And I think that that ability for women to do that, and the support that we have in Scotland for entrepreneurs to start up and sustain social enterprises is fantastic. And if we can be sharing more of these women's stories about how they did it, who they've leaned on, who supported them, then we can hopefully generate more and more of these social enterprises that women are setting up. I think the networks is incredibly important. We probably don't have enough of them in Scotland for women social entrepreneurs. We probably don't have enough spaces for women to come together to talk about this stuff, to share their challenges, which are all too common. And so that, going forward, I think is probably something which the sector can think about doing together collaboratively, to support existing women social entrepreneurs, but also kind of the aspiring ones who want to get into it. Mm-hmm.
Right, thanks, Charlotte. So just going to do a little summary of the things that I've been hearing that might, I guess, tie some of the things that I have heard from all three of you around the power of the networks, and the power of supporting each other and inspiring each other, making the spaces and making the time, and that there is real value in women coming together specifically, that we value enormously the support that we also get from men, and that we want them to continue doing that, but also there is something on us to make that space and make that make those places for us to come together as well. So, and I've just got a kind of a comment from Sharon, which is not a question, but inspired that social enterprise and set up by women are being set up in other countries. Yes, absolutely. And I think actually I'd really like to highlight the British Council report that was done last year about women in social enterprise, which did research around 5 countries: the USA, the UK, India, Pakistan and Brazil. And it's really fascinating to see how social enterprise has empowered women to be more confident, to feel that they could make their own choices, and to do more, to be more, when they didn't necessarily think they could. So there's so much opportunity, so much potential for social enterprise to be supporting women, and feel really proud to have been involved in this discussion here and heard from some of these amazing women doing it already. So I have myself muted for that. So thank you very much, everybody, and for sticking with us through the tricky sounds as well. So I know that was really hard, and especially to Karen and Sadaf from Malawi and Pakistan. It's hugely appreciated that you made time for this, and thank you, Charlotte, as well.
Thanks, Jess. You've done a great job.
Right, I think there'll be a recording of this in case you missed it, and we'll probably sort of edit as well. So thanks very much, everybody, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.